what this example is doing is it's just taking a list of recipients, of people to ask. Then it iterates over the list. It asks everyone a particular question and checks whether or not the answer was correct, and then it counts the amount of answers that were correct. So this is basically a made-up example that makes the use of the data context really necessary, because it maintains state during the iteration. Okay, so maybe we just start with the ask someone zip first, which is not completely implemented at this point, which allows us to do something yeah, with the model. So as an input, it just takes the recipient. So we can give one name to the input parameter of the whole model. So it just defines the person to be asked, and then the underlying implementation has to be precise about that. But on the level of the model, we don't really have to be too precise here, as long as there's no implementation. Okay. Then the first thing we do is sending a message to that particular person, asking the question, waiting for a response, and then we get a response by means of a text. We get the text, we want to check whether the text is equal to one particular answer that we expect. And then as one of the possible outcomes, we say, okay, the answer was correct, the answer was incorrect, or failure. Initially, we just want to define the control flow. So we say, okay, the first thing we do is we send the message, we send the question, we wait for the answer, and then it comes back with the answer, and we want to handle both cases separately. So either it was a failure, then we can just forward this as the outcome of the whole model. It is a failure, so we could not send the message, we did not get a response, something like that. In case of getting a response, we want to check whether the response was correct or not. So we have to perform an equals test, whether the answer was something that we expect. Okay, so it was correct. If it is equal, then it is correct. If it is not correct, if it is not equal, then it was incorrect. So maybe I'll just shift this. Okay, so it's a very simple model and a very simple control flow, but there is control flow. Then the recipient is passed in as an input parameter to the whole model, and I will just forward it to the input parameter of the send message zip. So that the send message zip knows who to send the question to. Then we want to define the question. Now we don't get the question as an input parameter, so we have to specify it somehow. And this is something new. You can right click on the input port and you can say convert to static value, which means that now we can specify the question statically. Okay, so in case of a success, so the person answers, we get a response, and we want to check whether or not the response is equal to no in this case. So we just forward that as one input to the equals test, and then the other one we want to make that static again. So convert input to static input. And then in the main model, we again have the start zip. We iterate over a list of recipients. When we reach the next zip, then there still are people in the list. So we haven't reached the end of the list. We get the next recipient from the list, pass that to the submodel that we just implemented. And then the outcome can be incorrect, failure. In both of those cases, we just do nothing. We just keep iterating over the list. If the answer was correct, we add 1 to our context variable. So yeah, the add 1 zip takes the current correct answers count as an input, and it writes its output into the same variable then. Yeah, and then once we're finished iterating over the list, we reach the exit branch, and we print the statistics, which in this case is yet another use of the context variable. And then success leads to success, and then we're done with the whole model. And in this case, like the data context really is necessary because we maintain the state over time. So we're not just passing it forward to another zip, but we need to model the concept of state.